إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم: إن خير الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. Dear brothers and sisters, in today's khutbah, we wanted to talk about somebody who is from the Ummahatul Mu'minun, from the wives, from the mothers of the believers, and they are the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And oftentimes when we hear khutbahs and lectures and talks about the mothers of the believers, oftentimes the focus is on Khadija al-Kubra radiyallahu anha, Khadija bint Khuwaylid radiyallahu anha, as it should be. She was the first wife of the Prophet ﷺ and very beloved to him throughout his life, or on Aisha radiyallahu anha. But there is a treasure of information for us in the lives of all of the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And what I wanted to do today briefly is talk about somebody who isn't talked about as much, or at least I don't know if anybody here has heard too much about her in khutbahs and lectures and stuff. And so today briefly we will discuss our mother Safiya bint Huyay. Safiya bint Huyay. Safiya bint Huyay, certain attributes about her. She was somebody who came into Islam from Judaism. She was the only wife of the Prophet ﷺ who was from a non-Arab background and was from a Jewish background. And some things to know about our mother, your mother and mine. She was extremely kind-hearted, extremely empathetic. She was very soft-hearted, very compassionate, very much sympathetic towards the pain and the suffering of others. She would cry very easily, very soft and emotional and very affectionate person. This was one thing about her. Number two, she was not very tall. So she was not a tall person. And number three, she was strikingly beautiful, exceptionally beautiful, and they all were. Safiya was especially beautiful. So Safiya radiallahu anha, our mother, it seems that she learned about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam before the Prophet learned about her. And so her earliest recollection of the mention of the Prophet in her life comes from her father and her uncle, and I think many of us here know this story. Now, Safiya radiallahu anha, she had the distinction of coming from Banu Nadir, which was a Jewish tribe, from her father's side, Huyay ibn Akhtab, and from Banu Qurayda, who was another Jewish tribe, from her mother's side, Barra ibn Samuel. And so both of these tribes were sworn enemies of Muslims. And this was her fate, that she descended from two separate tribes. Both tribes were enemies of the Prophet ﷺ. Banu Nadir were among those who one of them had tried to kill the Prophet ﷺ, and they were expelled from Medina. They leave Medina and they go to Khaybar. And so when the Muslims conquer Khaybar, again they have interaction with Banu Nadir, who had been expelled from Medina. Banu Qurayda, they would sign treaties with the Muslims, but then they would ally with the Quraysh and try to get the Quraysh to kill the Muslims in the Battle of the Trench and others. There was another third tribe, Banu Qaynuqa, who had violated the treaty of the constitution of Medina and had killed a Muslim. So we have all these tribes who happen to be Jewish tribes, and they were violating the treaty they had made with the Prophet, or they were trying to kill the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So one time when the hijrah was happening and Rasulullah was now finally coming into Medina through Quba, among the Jews that were very intrigued in wanting to meet him, for example Abdullah ibn Salam, who becomes a Muslim, were the father of Safiya, Huyay ibn Akhtab, and her uncle Abu Yasir. Now she says something very particular about them, and she says that I was so beloved to my father and my uncle that whenever they saw me, she's a child at this stage, playing with my siblings or with my cousins, they would ignore all of them and they would pick me up. So not only was her father doing that, giving her special attention over his other children, but even her uncle, she was not his daughter, she was his niece, but if he saw her playing with other children, including his own, he would give her a lot of special affection. This was because of how beloved she was to them. So she said that one day they set out early to meet, to go and see the Prophet ﷺ, to see if he was a true prophet. And she says, I began to wait for them, and they left early in the morning, and they came back late, and in their walk, in their saunter, they looked very, very depressed and very dejected, as if they had been struck with really bad news. So I waited for them to come close to me because I missed that they would give me so much attention. But when they came close to me, none of them wanted to pick me up and play with me, and I knew something was wrong. My father didn't want to do it, my uncle didn't want to do it. It was almost like I wasn't there, and they walked past me. And so I heard what my father and my uncle were talking about. And I heard my uncle, Abu Yasir, say to my father, "Is it really him?" Talking about the Prophet ﷺ. And her father said, "Yes." And so then the uncle said, "Are you sure? Are you positive? Can you confirm?" And the father said, "Yes, it is. It's him." Meaning this is the prophet that our books have foretold. This is the prophet that we were supposed to be waiting for, who was going to be, our prophet. And so then the uncle says to her father, "And what do you say? What should we do? Should we now go to him and believe in him?" And so her father replied, enmity for as long as I live. I will oppose him for as long as I live, after having acknowledged that he was the prophet who had been foretold in their own books. Why? Because he was from the children of Ismail and not from the children of Israel, Yaqub alayhi salam, because he wasn't from them. They did not want to believe in him. And these are people that also didn't believe in Isa alayhi salam, even though Isa alayhi salam was from them. So they, after acknowledging the Prophet ﷺ, they don't want to believe in him. Safiya, when she grew up, she ended up getting married to a man. His name was Kinana, and he was also from these tribes who lived in Khaybar. And so after she was married to him, she said, "One day I had a dream, and I woke up and I wanted to tell my husband this dream." And her husband is a vicious man, right? He's an abusive husband. So she wakes up and she very innocently, now that she's an older woman, she was about 17 at the time, married to this man, and she says, "I had a dream that the full moon rose up from behind Medina, and it came all the way up to where we are, and then it fell into my lap. This moon came from Medina and it fell into my lap." So her husband said, "Oh, so this means that you desire Muhammad, the prince of the Arabs, the leader of the Arabs." And then he punched her very hard in the face, leaving a mark on her that would be seen much later on. So he says, so now he turned it into this kind of jealousy thing and said that, and you have a desire toward Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now the Muslim army would then go on to attack Khaybar. So the Banu Nadir, who are in Khaybar, they put up a fight, but of course these are people that are treacherous, that have broken bonds. Among them are people who have tried to kill the Prophet ﷺ. So the fort of Khaybar is conquered by the Muslims. I think all of us know this. So when this treacherous tribe was captured by the Muslims, the punishment that was given was that all the men should be executed, and the women and the children should be spared but taken as captives. So among the people that were being killed, who were the Jewish people who had gone into treason and had tried to backstab the Muslims, were the father and the husband of Safiya radiallahu anha. And so at that point, one of the Sahaba from the Prophet's army wanted to take one of the captives for himself. So the Prophet said to him, "Take whoever you wish." So this man, Dihya al-Kalbi radiallahu anhu, he was one of the very handsome companions of Rasulullah. He picked for himself Safiya. And then another man came to the Prophet and said to him, "Ya Rasulullah, this woman that Dihya al-Kalbi has picked, she is a princess from Banu Nadir and from Banu Qurayza. And it is not befitting that she should be the captive of any one of us except our leader, which is you." There's no parity in her being the captive of somebody who was a soldier in the army. If you're going to capture the princess, then she shouldn't be anybody's captive but yours. So Rasulullah told Dihya to pick anybody else, whoever else, however much he wants. And so he took Safiya for himself. And then he asked her a question, because now she was his captive. Now Rasulullah, this is his attitude towards taking war captives. So he says to Safiya, he says that if you choose to become Muslim, then I will keep you for myself. And if not, meaning if you want to stay Jewish, if you want to stay in kufr, in your faith, I won't punish you. He said, I'll set you free. So the deal that he makes with her is, if you choose to keep your faith, I'm not going to do anything to you. In fact, I'll set you free. But if you choose to become Muslim, I will keep you for myself. Now, anybody who wants freedom, who wishes for freedom over captivity, will hurriedly choose the option, which is the easier of the two options, where they don't even have to change their religion. But Safiya replied, she said, I choose Allah and His Messenger. I choose Allah and His Messenger. Now, when the Sahaba got word of this, they did not know that Safiya radiallahu anha would be kept as a captive of the Prophet ﷺ or as his wife. But the next day, when they saw that the Prophet had told Safiya to veil herself, to cover her face, and a walima had been arranged, they realized that the Prophet ﷺ had not taken her as a captive, which he had the right to do, but he took her as his wife radiallahu anha. And this is the story of how Safiya radiallahu anha became a wife of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Barakallahu li wa lakum bil Qur'an al-azim wa naf'ani wa iyyakum bi ayati wa dhikri al-hakim. Aqulu ma tasma'un wa astaghfirullah li wa lakum wa li sa'iri al-muslimin fastaghfiruhu innahu huwa al-ghafur rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulihil Kareem wa ala ahlihi wa sahbihi ajma'een amma ba'd. The second part of the khutbah is about Safiya's struggles with jealousy, and this tells you that sometimes conflict and discord between even women who are the status of the wives of the Prophet, our mothers, even in those situations, the humanity of people could be seen. People would fall into things that humans fall into, which is episodes of jealousy and things like that. And we have to, when we learn about these things, when we learn about conflict between the Sahaba, when we learn about conflict between the Ummatul Mu'mineen, we truly have to treat these people as we would treat our own family members. If you hear that your mother got into an argument with your aunt, you would not go and criticize your mother and her character publicly, or criticize your aunt and her character publicly. You would not do that, because you would know that there's so much good to them that these small things happen in the family. And so in this regard, the family of the Prophet ﷺ was no different from the families that you and I have. So Safiya radiallahu anha oftentimes was subjected to bias, was subjected to her past being thrown at her, the stigma of being somebody who was Jewish. So when Safiya came with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and there are a few stories about this that we will quickly talk about. When Safiya radiallahu anha came to Medina, all the other wives of the Prophet ﷺ went to go see her. They hurried to go see her. And so one of the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, after she had seen her and had noticed how beautiful she was and how, what her personality was like, this wife now saw the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so the Prophet ﷺ asked her, he said, what do you see? What do you think of her? And she said, I see nothing but a Jewess. All I see is a Jew, nothing more, right? And this is after Safiya had become a Muslim. And so Rasulullah ﷺ told her, he said, do not say this, right? Because she has become a Muslim. You don't throw somebody's past in their face. And so this is something that one of the wives of the Prophet ﷺ said about her. And so he corrected her. He didn't hold back from correcting her, but he maintained his manner. He maintained his character, the way he was, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the profound thing that he told her is that what matters now is that she is a Muslim. That you should not say that about her, that she is a Jewess. All I see is a Jewess and nothing more. She is a Muslim. On another occasion, Rasulullah came into where Safiya was staying, because there were different hujurat for the different wives. And so when he entered upon Safiya, he saw her crying. So he said, "What's wrong? What happened?" And so she said that one of your wives, and she mentioned who she was, she said to me that you are the daughter of a Jew. What are you? You're just the daughter of a Jew. We are from the family of the Prophet. We are from his cousins, meaning that we are from the Arab. We're the Arabs, and you are Jewish. So what are you? All you are is the daughter of a Jew, nothing more. So Rasulullah, when he saw her crying, his heart melted. And he said, next time when they say that to you, tell them that you, and this was true, Safiya was descended from Harun alayhi salam. She was the direct descendant of Aaron, from the family of Imran, Ali Imran. And so she was descended from Harun alayhi salam. So he said, next time when they say something like that to you, they attack your family and your lineage, tell them that you are the daughter of Harun, Aaron, and that your uncle was Musa alayhi salam, and your husband is Muhammad. So who is better than you? Who can have more status than you? Who has better lineage? Answer them and say that to them. Again, he told her something to reply. He did not side with his wives because he was Arab like they were. No. When he saw her, he told her, this is the rebuttal that you should give to them if somebody tries to attack your background or remind you that you used to be former Jewish. On another occasion, Safiya radiallahu anha was riding upon a camel, and the Prophet's other wives were with him. And so the camel of Safiya radiallahu anha stumbled, and the camel got hurt. So the camel was now kind of hobbled and could not walk properly. So Rasulullah asked one of his other wives, who had a spare camel, to give her camel to Safiya radiallahu anha. So that wife said, should I give my camel to this Jewess? Should I give my camel to her? And so Rasulullah got so angry with her, but of course he was maintaining the character of who he was, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But he stopped talking to her, and he would not talk to her for a very long amount of time, an extended amount of time, to show her how terrible something it was that she had said, and it is coming from somebody from whom more is expected. Because she said, should I give my camel to this Jewess? And Safiya radiallahu anha was, obviously, she was a Muslim. There's another incident where what was being distributed is not mentioned. It could be clothing, it could be water, whatever it was. There was some object was being distributed amongst the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so one of the wives of the Prophet sallallahu was there, and so a share was being taken out for Safiya. And so when the Prophet was about to give that to Safiya, when there was only a small amount in his hand and he intended to give more, this other wife of the Prophet sallallahu said, this is enough for her. And so this was a tongue-in-cheek ridicule of Safiya's height, because Safiya was small. So she was saying that this tiny amount, for her it's enough because she's short. So when Rasulullah understood the joke, when he understood the mockery, he said to her, he said, you know what just came out of your mouth was poison enough was evil enough to poison all the water of Medina, what you just said about her. Mocking a physical attribute that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given to her, which was the shortness of her stature. What you just said was enough to poison all of the water of Medina. And so again, Rasulullah, we see them correcting them at every opportunity, not losing their patience with them, but at the same time not holding back, defending Safiya and the honor of Safiya radiallahu anha. In the final illness of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we talked about how Safiya was very soft-hearted, very compassionate, quick to cry, easily she would feel the pain of others. When Rasulullah was in his final moments, when he was in his final illness, and the pain that he was subjected to because of the severeness of the fever that he was in, at the time he was being nursed by his wives. They were around him, taking care of him, trying to cool him down. The pain that he was in was very apparent to anybody who was in the company of the Prophet ﷺ and could see that he was suffering with the fever that he was under. Safiya cried out in absolute distress, I wish that I was suffering, I wish I could take this pain away from you. I wish I was suffering in your place. I wish it was me instead of you. And this is something that she just cried out after seeing her husband suffering in his final illness. The other wives of the Prophet ﷺ, when they heard her say that, they began to look at each other like they began to gesture with each other with their eyes as if she is trying to fake her emotions toward the Prophet ﷺ. Our Prophet ﷺ, in that moment, even though he was suffering from pain, so much pain that one of his wives would say, I wish I was suffering in front of you, he said to the other wives, he said, by Allah, she spoke the truth. She was not saying it to look nice in front of me. Even though he himself was in pain, he made it a point to correct the ones that were gesturing each other with their eyes, what she said, I swear by Allah that this was the truth. Right? Again, testifying to the character and the nature of our mother, Safiya radiallahu anha. Safiya would eventually become really good friends with Aisha radiallahu anha. But this was after she had to be patient in the bias and the remarks and the catty comments and the things, her background being attacked and tribalism, all these things that she was subjected to radiallahu anha. She would live on after the Prophet's death into her 60s through the Khilafah of Abu Bakr, through the Khilafah of Umar, and into the Khilafah of Uthman radiallahu anhu. In the time of Umar, one of Safiya's servants, who was a young girl, went and complained to Umar ibn al-Khattab, and he said, Amir al-Mu'mineen, I need to tell you something about Safiya radiallahu anha. Number one, she still follows the Sabbath, right? So she's not truly a Muslim. She still is, she venerates Saturday, right, which is the day of the Sabbath. And number two, I have seen her keeping ties with the Yahud. She still loves the Yahud. She loves the Jews. So Umar, knowing that he is dealing with his mother, Ummahatul Mu'mineen, and she is one of the wives of Rasulullah, Umar went and still spoke to Safiya about what the servant had told him. And he said, this is what your servant has said to me, that you are maintaining your Jewish customs by following the Sabbath, and you maintain ties with the Yahud. She said, as for the Sabbath, she said, as the day I became Muslim. And since that day, the day of Friday has always been more beloved to me than the day of Saturday. Meaning there's nothing in me that sees Saturday as a more holy and sacred day than the day that Allah has given to the Muslims, which is the day of Friday. And she said, as for me, still loving the Jews, she says, I'm only keeping my ties with family. I happen to have family, they haven't converted, they're still Jews. All I'm doing is keeping my ties, my blood ties with them. And so Umar, he accepted those reasons and he walked away. And this is something for us Muslims as well. If you have family members that are still Hindu, that are still Christian, that are still Jewish, you may have family members that are atheists, your becoming Muslim should show them the more beautiful side of Islam in the way you deal with them, even if they haven't converted. You shouldn't be nice to them just because they converted and now you're harsh with them because they haven't converted you. That order to keep ties of kith and kin remain, even if you have family members that are not Muslim. So imagine what those ties mean if you have family members that are Muslim, and some of us are not talking to family members, how serious that is in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the time of Uthman, so this was an incident from the time of Umar. In the time of Uthman, there were Muslims who were very unhappy with Uthman. They wanted to have Uthman removed from power, and these people now had the gall to assassinate Uthman radiallahu anhu. So they surrounded his house. These are people that wanted to lay siege to his house, and they cut off his access from food and water. They wanted to starve him out. When Safiya learned about this, she took it upon herself to put food and water on her camel, and she tried her best by herself. This is a widow, she doesn't have a man with her, to bring water to the house of Uthman so that Uthman and his wife Naila could have food to eat and water to drink. The people that wanted to kill Uthman, that had surrounded, and they were Muslims, they had surrounded Uthman. When they saw that the wife of the Prophet ﷺ is coming to support Uthman, one young man got up and he punched the camel of Safiya so hard that the camel got startled and began running, and the camel ran in such a way that Safiya radiallahu anha almost fell off her camel. This is the adab that these Muslims showed towards the Ummahatul Mu'minun. Why? Because she wanted to bring food and water to somebody who was being starved of food and drink. So she almost falls off her camel. The camel is chased away by this person, and basically she's chased back to her house. She still didn't give up our mother. She still didn't give up. She created like a little bridge. Her house was next to Uthman's, using a plank, and she would try to send food from her rooftop to the rooftop of Uthman, or from her window into the window of Uthman, so that Uthman could have food and water to drink. He was, after all, Amir al-Mu'mineen, and he was from the Ashrat al-Mubashirun. And so when the people who wanted to kill Uthman saw that, they knocked off the bridge and they knocked that down as well. But these incidences tell you about the character of our mother, how soft-hearted she was, how compassionate she was to the suffering of others, and she continued in that way after her husband ﷺ was long gone. It wasn't something that she was doing while he was alive. After he was long gone, she was proving herself over and over again in the time of Umar, in the time of Uthman. May Allah have mercy on our mother, and may He unite us with her and with all of the Ummahatul Mu'minun. And this is our mother Safiya bint Huyay radiyallahu anha, Ummul Mu'minin. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربنا فاغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما عباد الله رحمكم الله اتقوا الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون اذكروا الله يذكركم ويثبت أقدامكم وأقم الصلاة إن الصلاة كانت على المؤمنين كتابا موقوتا.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
لا إله إلا الله أقيموا صفوفكم وتراصوا. Brothers, please stand shoulder to shoulder and ankle to ankle. Straighten your rows and please make room and accommodate somebody who is trying to get into your row. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, he would say that the best of you are those with the softest of shoulders, meaning that not people who are rough in prayer, but people that are accommodating to others. So let us be like that, inshallah. Aqim. Allahu Akbar. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين والسماء ذات البروج واليوم الموعود وشاهد ومشهود قتل أصحاب الأخدود النار ذات الوقود إذ هم عليها قعود وهم على ما يفعلون بالمؤمنين شهود وما نقموا منهم إلا أن يؤمنوا بالله العزيز الحميد الذي له ملك السماوات والأرض والله على كل شيء شهيد إن الذين فتنوا المؤمنين والمؤمنات ثم لم يتوبوا فلهم عذاب جهنم ولهم عذاب الحريق إن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات لهم جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار ذلك الفوز الكبير إن بطش ربك لشديد إنه هو يبدئ ويعيد وهو الغفور الودود ذو العرش المجيد فعال لما يريد هل أتاك حديث الجنود فرعون وثمود بل الذين كفروا في تكذيب والله من ورائهم محيط بل هو قرآن مجيد في لوح محفوظ. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده ربنا لك الحمد حمدا طيب. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. ربنا لك الحمد. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. استغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو وأتوب إليه. استغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو وأتوب إليه. اللهم أنت السلام.